Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. It's good to see you. You've seen the title, so at this stage you know more about today's reading than I do, since I speak to you from the recent alternate past. This is a general, timeless one, ideally designed for quite a large audience, so we won't get as specific as we would in a private booking, link down below. If most of what I'm saying feels like an answer to a question you've been living, take those tidbits with you and let a fellow traveller excavate the rest. If it's not your reading, there are playlists on my channel hub to randomise finding something else. Whilst it's true that a broken clock is right twice a day, I'm not sure that same clock is right 10 times within the hour. So trust yourself, above all, to know what's useful for you and what makes you feel more empowered for hearing it, no matter what your beliefs. While we're on beliefs, on this channel gendered terms are just a specificity of language to describe energetic tendencies and signatures, solar or lunar inclination in accordance with a hermetic law of polarity, and not any kind of socialisation to buy into wholesale or conflate with the identity or orientation of anyone described. Romantic and spiritual labels used are plucked from lengthy precedent predating any unfortunate trending controversies or engineered cyclical backlash. My dude, around these parts, we don't relinquish the complexity of our full histories. We trust ourselves cognitively to adapt what we consume and see what's healthy and long-term accurate. I'm legally obliged to say this is entertainment in quote marks and that I'm an occultist not qualified in unrelated disciplines to advise on physical and mental health, finances, legalities. You get the picture, you're in charge of you. All my readings are protected and warded by frankly magnificent beneficial forces, though I don't share my custom prep rituals on camera any more than I give out my address. I hope the reasoning behind that is obvious, but you can trust there are zero parasitic or adversarial influences permitted within 100 unseen paces of any signal we patch from the noise here today. So sit back, relax into the shape of your most luminous possible future self, cozy up to imaginal allies, and take in whatever it is you need to hear. If you do like it, this small channel with a big mission very much appreciates subscriptions, thoughtful comments, or donations in order to spread the word and keep the lights on. Now, let's tune that dial. Righty, so your word, I don't know whether you saw that, but it's zombie. And we're using the Marseille deck from my former Marseille minis, which was how this esoteric tombola and psychic lucky dip started out. See the playlist if you haven't. The Maxfield Parish playing cards and the This Day I Am cards, which I'm going to take 3 of to start. Zombie, right? So we might be taking ourselves out of a zombified state at the minute, because it's unusual that we have action cards in sort of larger numbers. We've got This Day I Am catching up, This Day I Am beating my high score, and This Day I Am embracing nature. Catching up and beating my high score together to me are already suggesting kind of trying to outdo a previous record for yourself or get things going in a way that is better than they've already been in that sense. Let's get one Maxfield for now. So we've got a 7 of Swords, and it's this image here of the lanterns. Yeah, let's get 3 Marseille. Sorry, I've already got things whirring, but I'll see whether I'm right. Right. Okay, so a 21 World. I think it might be the world or the universe in this deck. Then we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, a 10 of Swords, but it's in the reverse, and a 9 of Pentacles, again in the reverse, because of the way that I read it. So, World, 10 of Swords, 9 of Pence. Beating your high score. Firstly, I'm not seeing anybody else come into the reading. Maybe a sort of group suggestion with this 7, but I think that's more about like how you're hanging out, who you're hanging out with in a recreational sense when you're not doing this stuff. Because again, beating your high score and stuff like that, they're all very solo activities. Okay, so this is the culmination of something. We've got 2 cards that are about culmination, one of which is a major. But I think it's like, it ended already. Oh, it's a zombie. I was gonna say like it's dead but it won't lie down, and that might be a relevant song for some of you as well. But it's like the world is the biggest ending you can get. We're getting that in recent past. And then we've also got a Ten of Swords, which is another ending. So it's like, but the ending is ended. It's like the double tap, right? It's like, but I thought I was dead. No, it's set up again. Oh, okay. And then it's like, well, what about this time with the Nine of Pentacles? Nine of Pentacles can be sort of stability by yourself, doing well in the world. But a 9 also is like, again, an incompletion. It's like leaving it hanging. So it's like, it's dead. It's definitely dead. Oh, wait. We'll kill it again. It's not quite dead. And it seems to be a cliffhanger. There is something that you haven't left behind, that you haven't fully put to rest. And I'm hearing it might be to do with, if you are a film fan like me, which might be one of the reasons you come to the channel, the period that 28 years later was out in the cinema might be a real clue for you on what this is. I'm just hearing that for some of you. But it's like you wanted something to complete and you were sure that it had. And then it hadn't, but you were sad that it hadn't. So you tried again to like finish it off. Like, no, really no. And then there was another instance of like, okay, well, I'm not sad about it now. I'm doing well on my own. For some of you, I'm doing well single, right? Because this might be a relationship sort of left in the past and tried to put it to bed. But there's something not quite there about that cycle as well, because we're in a reverse, we're in a retrograde. We're in a deck where reversals aren't obvious, so maybe other people aren't seeing that this is kind of left hanging for you or unfinished. But there isn't quite that sense that I normally get with the Nine of Pence of self-fulfillment, of self-completion, of being okay on your own, listening to your inner voice, and just kind of managing your money and living a soft life. You know, it's not quite there, partly because of the deck that it's in and the way that it presents differently, partly because it's in a sort of wonky deck where the history of the VAV is really interesting and involves like backwards printing press and scandalous things done after a printing shift in the evenings. It's really cool to research if you're into that. But it does mean that there's lots of sort of uneven placements of things. And I don't know about you, but to me this looks like those pentacles in the upright of the card, right, wouldn't be rooted in the earth. They wouldn't be very grounded. They wouldn't be very pentacly, very earthen. So it's almost like no one else is seeing that this is affecting you this way. But there's a sense of being ungrounded, of unmoored. Gravity, the reading I just did, might be really useful for you as well, particularly if this is a feeling that is related to relationships and receiving love and relating to others in all ways really, but particularly in a sort of romantic sense. Like you might be wanting to move forward from something of that nature and just feeling like you haven't quite finished off the last cycle enough for that to feel like a legitimate thing is what I want to say. So it's like it's a zombie, it's still walking around. And now I'm hearing cranberry zombie and I'm hearing what's in your head, what's in your head. It's like you're sort of keeping it alive. And that's not an accusation, but it does fit with this Seven of Swords here as well, because Seven of Swords is about deception and this is a fairy tale deck. It's about fantasies. It's a very Knight of Cups energy of deck because of the sort of illustrator Max Field was. And with these lanterns as well, it's all very like, lights in the night and very sort of pretty. And there might be a Tangled reference in that as well. Tangled might be relevant for you, especially because it's pink as I'm saying that, right? And it probably moved to lilac. But there's like a sense of keeping the dream alive with this in a deceptive way, that is either giving, on the one hand, self-deception, or deceiving others that it's not something you still think about on the regular, in order to portray that this Nine of Pentacles energy is something you're embodying instead, and that it was truly over 2 steps back, 2 double taps back, when it should have originally died before it was reanimated, right? That's where zombie is on this. So how does that relate to this? Oh, they're the 3 stages. Okay, so your This Day I Am cards. Usually I use these in a reading to be kind of prescriptive in terms of like helpful action or a pointer towards next magical action or something like that. And they are extras in my shop for that, and have been in readings for that on here. But the way that I'm seeing this is like parallel to the 3 Marseille cards. So when you originally killed this off in the big bad way, in the big, this felt final at the time fashion, whether it was a breakup, whether it was you leaving a job, a circumstance, just putting an end to something in a very dramatic, like, no, this ends here. There is something about that to do with embracing nature. So the card says, get outdoors for at least 30 minutes, go to the beach, the woods or the park, soak up some nature and boost your mood. My feeling was that either a conversation took place outside or in nature in some way. Ooh, or for some of you, I'm seeing the screens that she gets instead of windows in the Hunger Games that like depict woods, but they're not real woods. So there's something about like discussing it in front of like, it makes me think of like the Amazon screensavers that are like images of places going past. Like, hit me up in the comments if that is relevant and I got that right, but there's almost something like a digitization of a nature thing going on in the background while 2 people have a very serious chat, which for some of you is a breakup, for others is just like a termination of something. Termination is a crucial word there. So for some of you, this was about the termination of the pregnancy as well. And I'm very sorry if that was you, and I hope that you're coping well, whatever decisions were made about that, and you know, whoever felt what about what. But yeah, there's something that either took place out in nature or was in front of like false nature in that sort of digital Hunger Games screen way. Or you kind of went running and stuff to cope afterwards, or both, you know. But there's the thing of like somebody being in nature, but like being far away from civilization almost, in order to like really, really kill it, right? So this thing was dead, the conversation was had to deaden it, but then it's almost like you sensed that it would do this zombie thing and come back. So you went running or you went walking, and I'm hearing zombies run, and we've got the word zombie, so maybe you did like the zombies run 5k challenge and then you upped it, and I love that. Like I'm disabled, but you can do it at a waddle and I really enjoy it. For those who don't know, I'm not sponsored or anything, it's just cool. You're listening to a story about a zombie outbreak, and then you're hearing that the zombies are getting closer, and you have to up your pace at whatever you're doing, like running, cycling, walking, fast enough that the zombies don't catch up to you in order to keep the story going. And it's a really good motivator for exercise. So for someone that's important and you haven't tried that, and it's really fun. But I used to do it when I was kind of in recovery for something major that happened, just at a waddle, and it was really good. So some of you may have done that, or you may have just been like out in nature doing something active, or even just meditating in order to try and distance from this thing that happened. Or like I say, it was like ending it in front of nature or in front of a screen of nature. The other thing I'm getting with the screen of nature is Old Boy, and the fact that in his like prison that he's kept in, spoilers, only mild spoilers though, because you kind of know from early on. So he's kept in a prison by someone and he doesn't know why or who, and he's there for years. We're talking lockdown, but for like 15 years of his life, something like that. And he has, similar to the Hunger Games, but preceding it, he has like a window that is in fact just like a screen of something that would be outside, right? And he's actually just constantly under fluorescence going insane. But there's something about that, and about confinement, and about like maybe even, again, for some of you, you were in a hospital setting, and there were like screens of what it would be like outside, but you were very much trapped in there. So I'm sorry if that was you, that sounds awful, and I've sort of experienced similar, but there's a sense of confinement with this World card that I don't normally get. And she is indeed in a ring, but sort of surrounded by other things. So it's like the world is going on outside in a way that it's not wherever you are, in letting go of this. So for some of you, you wanted to embrace nature, but you might have gone through agoraphobia, or you might be like me, where you have disabilities that complicate doing all that. And whoa. Oh, wow. That was wild. That was like a bug flew into my mouth, and there's no bugs in here. It was like, you are not to speak about this. It's coming back. Why do I feel like you were confined in a place by a person with that Tangled reference? Can I please chat about this now? Okay. Sorry, had to do some protection work there. Sorry for the delay. Yeah, so I think that for those of you who resonate with the isolation thing, you might have been put in a place or a situation of isolation by a person, maybe even in an abusive dynamic or in a sort of medical sense or something, where you weren't able to communicate as freely as you would want to, because that was really my throat. And you felt distance from it. What I was going to say before that happened was that as a disabled person, when I was growing up, I was an ambulatory wheelchair user, which means you can get in and out of it, but you do need it most of the time, right? So you'll stand up out of it and people will go, oh, it's a miracle, but like actually you do need that wheelchair, right? And for one reason or another, as well as using a wheelchair, I used to stay in at like recess and lunchtimes instead of playing outside in the playground, because I was kind of too tempted to do certain joining in things that would just ultimately put me in hospital. So a lot of my memories of like the socialization of school stuff are quite difficult and complex and nuanced memories of like both having a good time with a friend indoors, because I always like got to take a nominated friend with me, but also of being separate from playtime with other kids and watching playground games and things through glass and sort of trying to like lip read and understand what they were doing and what the rules of the games were, and trying to like, you know, come to class afterwards and talk about what was going on and try and fit in when I really had no idea what was going on. And as an analogy, I think that's actually a very appropriate way of describing disability to people. That you are sort of slightly alien. You will watch other people and you will learn how to keep up in some fashion, but you will always be on the other side of the glass. You're never truly invited to the game. You're never truly initiated into what the rules are. And you can have fantastic relationships with the people around you, but in the end, they will always run back outside and join in, and you can't, right? And I'm sorry if that's triggering to any of you, but I feel pulled to express it because as I was about to do a shorter version, that just hit. So there might be a thing with this where you put a stop to something or an end to something and felt almost like you were watching other people go ahead with games or lifestyles or interactions with each other or something that you then felt that you couldn't be a part of anymore, or you felt that you understood what they were doing, but you would always be separate from it. And there's a grief to that. There's a huge grief to that. I mean, remember when we're talking zombie, we're talking death, right? Something died here, whether it was brought back or not. And I think as it did, you know, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a child even, I'm so sorry if that's you, or like just something you let go of in a different sense, in a more sort of grounded way. There was a grief around letting it go, or not around letting it go necessarily, but around who you would be to everyone else afterwards. And that's why it's a very sort of solitude energy, actually, I think. And that the group is only in the dreaming, in the fairy tale, in the these are my friends in the game, in the dream. And it's not that you don't have friends, it's that there was a removal of you here from other things. You are also watching through glass, and you don't have to be a disabled person. I know that it's you know, physically disabled people obviously experience it, neurodivergent people experience it, but also able-bodied people experience it when they've had the kind of life circumstance that separates them from their peers in some, confirmation, that separates them from their peers in some fashion, where they feel like they're not going to be able to catch up, right? We've got the catching up card. Or where they feel like they understand what's happening, but it's through that glass. So even if they were to shout at somebody, he's over there, tag him or whatever, they're not playing with you. They're not going to hear you, you know? Now I'm hearing in space, no one can hear you scream. So for some of you, you've like done a bit of what I did, where you've kind of used genre media as a way to self-soothe and find catharsis and distance a bit in a healthy way, rather than what feels like a way that's imposed upon you. But it's interesting that we had Tangled and Old Boy coming in, because they're both about kind of being locked in a tower by somebody who doesn't have the best intentions for you. So, I mean, again, it's a very general reading. If you want to get really specific, the best thing is to book with me. But in a broad sense, there is an ingredient of somebody who doesn't have your best intentions at the forefront as much as their own best intentions for themselves, who has aided you being put in that position or put in that confinement or separated from others in that way. And that can be very strong and obvious, or it can sometimes be really subtle and in the nuances of language or persuasion, or not even a conscious thing, but just not being with you for your successes or supporting you in quite the way that you deserve to be supported. So I want you to think on that, whatever that is. But yeah, so those are the first two. Then there was the second death, right? There was it is over, but there is like a culmination process here with the swords, and it's probably like an intellectual death of it, like a death of the idea of it almost. So for many, this will be a relationship where it's like you ended it, but you didn't stop thinking about that person in a sort of regular, habitual way for a long time. And then when you did, it's this day I am beating my high score. So you could have literally played video games, how old am I? But you know what I mean, you could have been a gamer in order to kind of separate from it, and that helped that idea healing, or will help if this is you in the present day, right? But also beating my high score implies like a process of going a certain number of days without backtracking and then beating what you got to yesterday. For some of you, this is giving sobriety as well. Like, you're only focusing on the day in front of you, but if you stay sober for that, you've made it to 2 or 5 or 10 or 365 days. And that can be described with the Ten of Swords also. And it says, whether it's on a games console, a board game with friends, or even at your local arcade, find time for fun and beat your high score. So it's like beating yourself at what you used to be able to do. And again, general audience, so for some this is a really serious situation, for some this is just like, oh, I worked myself out of this habit and I thought I was done and then I wasn't, and then I thought I was again, and then I still feel a bit weird about it. In that case, it's probably more like gaming has helped or will help. But for others of you, this gaming analogy relates right back around to that feeling of being behind glass and separate from the fun and games of other people, or the movements of your peers through the world. And then with this kind of Nine of Pentacles of like, is it over though? Yeah, well, no. Is it though? There is this day I am catching up. So it's almost like a sense that if you don't like double, triple tap this zombie situation, whatever it is, you might not catch up to everybody else in time. So there's like an age thing going on here. Again, for some this will be fertility related. For others this will be to do with like meeting someone at a certain age, or by a certain threshold where you have to be in a different place or start a particular course of study or whatever it is. For others this is just like a general sense of catch up, like a bit of a FOMO thing, a bit of a comparison thing to what everybody else is like demonstrably doing on social media and things like that, where it's like, yeah, there's no deadline for this, but I don't feel caught up to, you know, Derek, why is the name Derek coming through? Derek over here. But let me know in the comments if Derek is relevant somehow. Or like my friend Dino, or, you know, my friend Sarah over here and what they're doing, or, you know, whatever it may be. There's like a comparison thing of like catching up to the way other people are. But I think what's unacknowledged in all of this is that there is a traumatic element to having to leave it behind, whether it's a minor or a major thing. And you're not really giving yourself that time to fully process it as like, yeah, it was hard to let this go, as well as to just catch up. You're kind of rushing yourself is what I want to say. And with Pentacles being like such a practical suit, it's like, I must get my Pentacles in a row. The preceding card to this would be the 8, where you're systematically doing something, which again is that sobriety thing of beating your high score. And then the 9 is like, I'm almost there. For those of you who've seen, it's a very problematic picture now, but the Steve Martin movie, Three Amigos, where he's tied up in El Guapo's like lair, and he's like attached to that contraption that like pulls him back against the wall. And there's an entire sequence of Steve Martin going, gotta make it, and each step forward that he comes, he's like lifting weights and all these chains are rattling, because this thing is designed to like make him go and back into the wall, and he's trapped there. So there's that image of you being like, I will, this is really hard, I will, and then kind of finding yourself back at the wall for some reason because of the weight of it. And for many that's an emotional weight. So I want you to really kind of analyse that idea. Like, you don't have to watch the film, you don't have to watch the scene, but it's that thing of like tugging almost against the physics of the situation, but in like an emotionally letting go way. And it says, feeling connected is good for your well-being. Text a friend or family member and arrange to meet up, make it a special event. Now that's giving a bit of flippity-dippity to me, in that you might indeed have turned to people for support in what is quite an isolated reading, as discussed. But also, if I'm getting this thing of gotta make it, for him to finally pull the lever to sort of settle the contraption so that he can break out of his cell, there is almost a sense that like some of those interactions are the things you're pulling against that pull you back to the place that you started from, right? So it's like a double-edged sword, where sometimes being around people has been really supportive to this new thing, or to the ending of the old thing, should I say, more accurately. But then other times being around people has almost influenced you to go back into old habits or think in old patterns, or it's been another source of that comparison and differentiation from others in a way that has been emotionally unhealthy for you and kind of set you back further than you thought you'd be. So it's like, no wonder this thing isn't dying yet, or it's like dying and then it's rising again, and it's like, oh damn, I didn't aim for the head, I didn't obey the rules of zombies. There is also a sense with zombie, I'm going to take off more rings, there's a thing about taking off rings here, so this could have been the ending of a marriage for some, or at least a crucial relationship. There's a thing with zombie about like going through the world as a zombie as well, or in a state of like dissociation or blankness, or having such a one-track mind in terms of the thing that will get you through it, that you're kind of shuffling forward towards that thing without much consciousness of your external environment in a bigger way. Now that is interesting when we had Old Boy and Hunger Games analogies, because the broader environment is such a crucial aspect for both. And keeping an eye on what is going on around you can be the thing, the difference between getting out of that room alive versus not. Not in a literal sense for this reading, but you know what I'm saying. It's like those observational skills about other things rather than this zombified state would be a much more beneficial way of functioning in the world, but it might feel like you were just kind of shuffling forward, maybe even chanting brains, or whatever it is, whatever your brains is, right? I think of the South Park episode where it's not very politically correct or morally correct, but there are displaced guys and they're moaning change, as in like spare change rather than, yeah. So it's like that all they can think about is the money and become zombies. They become zombie-like and the same change. And it's like that. That's really, it's probably not a comfortable analogy to put on a public channel because it's not a scene that I'm a fan of really. And I do like South Park generally, but I thought that was a bit, But yeah, it's that sort of like going after the one thing you can think about of being like, please this is the thing to focus on. I just want that. I don't want to think about the rest of it. I just want that. And it's kind of propelling forward. So what's the undercurrent of all of this? What's the dark stream under the reading? And what is the overhead, the rainbow, the promise of the future above it? Interesting that flipped. So the undercurrent first. We have Justice. And I didn't even recognise her. So there might be like, that might be a thing, like justice. What is justice? I wouldn't even recognise justice because the situation feels so unjust. And indeed it did come up upside down. So the justice is reversed. The whole process feels like a cosmic injustice, I think. Yeah. And I think that's pretty apt, you know, it's another major to this world card. So like the injustice of the situation, whatever that may be, whatever context that is, felt the most acute when you were first letting go of it, when the zombie, or what is now the zombie, was just the living person that first kind of died. And then kind of as the diluted, like, oh, it's back, you know, aim for this, or try and shoot it in the head or whatever, oh, it's back again. As that process happened, maybe the sense of injustice kind of waned a little bit, but it's always been present throughout. It's just, like I say, it's like a diluted version. It's like and again with this Seven of Swords, it might be something that you deny still feeling as strongly. I feel pulled to share from my own experience that sometimes you can be very done with a breakup in the practical sense and in the sense of how you feel about a person, but it can be months or years before your resentment at the injustice of the overall situation finishes out. And that is appropriate for some of you, that like, however much you tell yourself it's done, maybe you don't feel like it's done, not because it isn't and not because you haven't moved on in some senses, but because you're still so bothered by it. And if that's true, then you're seeing me today so that I can tell you that that botheredness might not be associated with the person or the relationship, but might instead be tied to the sense of injustice that you're still not over. So it's not a sign that you're not done with the situation. It's a sign that there is still some emotional processing to do with the grief of, I can't believe this happened to me, right? Not even I can't believe I had to let it go, but just, I can't believe this bullshit happened. What an absolute injustice. So I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to laugh at you. I'm just like laughing at the sort of like cosmic joke, I guess. Like, this may even be for some of you something you laugh about, but in like a really bitter sense. Like I'm now seeing the scene in Fight Club on the plane where he says something like, you've got a, what is it now? It's like, he expresses that he's got like a bitter resignation in his laugh or something like that. And it's like that kind of laughter, right? Yeah, there's just like a sense of, however practical the situation is becoming with the shift from majors to swords to pentacles, and however on top of things you are actually becoming, demonstrably through this, there is like, just a like, fuck this though, you know? That's what's coming through. And then the sort of promise of future stuff, or the rainbow over the reading, is the Six of Wands reversed. Or is that 7? No, it's a 6. Which is like a lack of success. That's a very, it's an appropriate overarching theme for the sorts of things that we're describing, depending on what your story is. But it's not a great like covenant to see in a rainbow, right? It's not a great, or is it? Yeah, so what's coming through from Spirit is, you did have this feeling of it being a grand and almost cosmic injustice, and maybe it's even affected your faith if it was a big deal thing, and affected sort of the way that you relate to your spirituality. And yes, I've had medical things, romantic things, familial things that have done the same to me for a time, where I've like, just despite what you see before you, just kind of abandoned belief for a bit and gone like, well, if you can do that to me, fuck all of y'all. And just tapped out of any relationship to the extra human, even though I know that it's there, right? I've just kind of lost faith for a minute, or deliberately like threw it on the ground, kind of. I don't need your handouts. That kind of a thing might be going on. But what's being expressed here is that actually the injustice, the lack of success being the Six of Wands in the upright, might be the justice of the situation, in that this wasn't meant to succeed in this way. This wasn't meant to go forward down the path it was going. You weren't meant to keep this behaviour in your future. You weren't meant to lean on this addiction. You weren't meant to stay in this relationship. And for some of you, and this is a real spiritual humdinger that I barely even want to get to in a public reading, but you weren't meant to be that figure for someone at that time, if you catch my drift. Whether that's that it happens at another point, or whether it's just that it wasn't, that there was a contractual thing going on there spiritually, and it couldn't manifest in the way that you dreamt it. That's so difficult for me to deliver, because I have so many issues with that idea, but that's what's coming through. And again, I'm really sorry if that is your story in this, but it won't be for everybody. But there is this thing of like, your promise from whatever you believe in, or whatever you're currently not believing in, right? Even if that's like belief in self, because I know I have some Satanists and things on this channel, and that's all fine and gravy. But your kind of like agreement from that is that this wasn't for you, and it won't succeed, and that's the best possible thing. It won't finish in the sense of coming to a completion. It will finish in the sense of culminating back where you left it with this World card, because it wasn't meant to be yours in the future. It wasn't meant to continue going on. If this is a person that you lost, that person was not meant to continue in their incarnation at that time. And I know how hard that one is, because I don't know whether you saw my other reading for Beautiful and the bit after it about why I took a break, but I had 3 bereavements in a row. One of them was a partner, one of them was the family member I'm closest to. Crikey, right? It's sometimes so difficult to come to grips with the idea that someone is not meant to stay with us, even if they came with us. But for some of you, that is what's coming through in this. And if it's less serious, it was just like, you were not meant to take this further. And what I'm hearing is sirens, which is always a protection nod for me now. And some of it's coming through as to protect you from something. So I don't know what that is, you know, but if it was like a work project, maybe it wasn't meant to go to its full fruition as desired, because if it had, you would have been on a team that caused problems for you in a bigger career sense, or you would have been sent to a location that you didn't want to live and work at. Or if this is a much more intimate situation, this didn't work out because that person wasn't for you, and there might be someone who is, or several someones who are, right? Again, I know how difficult all of that is to hear, because I've been in all of these situations, right? But that's what's being said. Can we have 3 of these to lighten the mood and finish us off with this sunbeam? And indeed, like, maybe, how do we kill it, right? Because we've done the aiming for the head, we've done trying different ways, and we're on our 3rd attempt now. We're sitting in this Pentacles energy. So how do we leave this in the past? Okay, so we've got a Knight of Wands, and this image here of this person kind of dreaming. Knight of Wands energy can be like flippancy and a lack of consideration for others when it's in a sexual energy. But in an energy where it's in the light, it can be about creativity, it can be about rushing in with creative imagination stuff. It can be about connection to the spiritual that happens again really fast. About listening to spirit when spirit ride in and go, hey, we're here. And also with this guy staring off into the distance and all the bubbles, it's about allowing yourself to dream again, I think. Allowing yourself to be creative, to be imaginative, to work in the realm of the spirit again. And even if that doesn't feel like a spirituality that has engagement with something else feeding back, because you don't feel ready for that after all this, it's certainly like a, what do I desire next? Because wands is also like desirousness in a positive sense, as a motivator. It's, where do I see myself being in my best vision for myself? Where do I deeply long to be, rather than where have I been put? Also, bubbles being on the card are water and air, so that's putting ideas to the emotions you have. And with an overall fire card, that suggests to me things like creating Pinterest boards, vision boards, imaginative sequences in your own head, stuff where you visualize the future from an emotional embodied place, but in an intellectualized way. So you're using the mind to picture what the heart wants, if that makes sense to you. That's coming through as like how you kill it. And then can we have 3 other things just together to tell us whatever and to make us feel slightly better, universe? This is, wow, what a heavy reading, especially late at night when I'm filming this. Okay, so what we got was a King of Pentacles that looks like this, a Four of Swords that looks like this, and again we've got the community coming back, but in the sense of the kind of gathering around the campfire rather than like the dream community. So this is real interactions and perhaps ritualizations and like going away together and bonding and doing kind of camping out type stuff, or getting together for like religious affiliations. And then we have the 9 of Swords, which is interesting because we had that 10 and we're backtracking from it, which is this guy who appears to have been made into a giant. When I get this, it tends to feel, I think I've had it on the free stuff on the channel before, where it's been like feeling massive, feeling like something that's been observed by everyone, feeling like everyone can see your grief, or you're too big, or you're too noticeable in some way, and like coming to terms with that and letting go of that. If you've ever seen the sculptures of Ron Muick, who, fun fact, was the guy inside Ludo in Labyrinth, he does these incredible, like really lifelike, hair by hair, pore by pore sculptures of people, but he makes them sometimes very small, sometimes huge and obtrusive, and they are posed in a sense where they are sometimes aware of that obtrusiveness. So his artwork, Ron M-U-E-K, might be a really good thing to Google as a cathartic thing to kind of look through and process and stuff. I find looking at art to be like a really good way of transitioning past grief sometimes, but it's that sense of like feeling too seen in all of this, like people are watching and they're not, but there's something about processing that for you and like really maybe accepting it and having a good cry and being like, yeah, I feel too big, too noticeable. I feel like everyone can see the pain I'm in. I feel like everyone can see the habits and addictions I used to have, or the position I used to be in, or the difference between me and them. And there's like some, I want to say just some sitting with that and feeling sad about it and then letting it kind of move through you. Because when we don't acknowledge emotions, it's much harder to process them, to release them, right? And I say that as a Cancer stellium who is emotional much of the time, but always very quickly releases those emotions, to the point where I can be like sobbing on a phone to a friend and they'll check in on me an hour later because they're worried beyond belief. And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I sobbed it out. How are you? I'm doing this thing. I'm baking a pie. And it is like the most irritating thing if you don't have a stellium in Cancer. But it is that we feel so hard almost that it's like, and then it's gone. Because it's out, it's gone, you know? And there is a calling to do that. So that's that card. Then these, I think, are in combination. I did say about the sort of meeting friends in a campfire way, whatever that means to you, be really beneficial. Particularly with it being Four of Swords, because that's about deep rest. If you've had, excuse me, confirmation before I say it. Sorry, I do apologise. If you've had depression associated with any of this cycle, deep rest, deep rest, right? Take that deep rest. And take it maybe with supportive people around you. If you have had that feeling of gotta make it, where you've been kind of dragged back by your peers or your family or whatever it is, the reading is saying, well, maybe now is the time to return to them, where either you don't get that same reaction quite as hard, or because you've seen this reading, you're more kind of conscious of that relationship, so you're more able to be like, I see in this moment this is affecting me like this, and what I won't do is backtrack because of that feeling. What I won't do is become dysfunctional because it's an unconscious process, and so I'll make it conscious, and I'll be like, right, I'm feeling stressed because so-and-so said this thing, and that's okay because of how I've been feeling, and I'm going to try and be around them and just have a good time anyway, kind of thing. It's not a denial of self, but it is an acceptance that, like, sometimes the people around us have the best intentions, even if they're bringing up triggers for us on some things, right? And then with the King of Pentacles being the person in the barley fields, for some of you the fields of barley or fields of gold or whatever it is, the Sting song might be relevant. Hit me up in the comments if that's you. But more generally, this seems to be about abundance, right? It's about the harvest. And King of Pentacles is like almost an answer to this 9, where the 9 is building up resources and gradually feeling better being single, and gradually feeling better tuning into yourself, and more practically grounded and more in charge of your life. And then a few steps ahead of that, which it seems is like imminently where you'll be, is the King, who is like not just in charge of himself and his own harvest, but also kind of in charge of the kingdom, and has everything pretty nailed, you know, pretty organized, and he knows what he's doing, not just for himself, but for the benefit of the broader contribution, right? Whether that's socially or in a kind of legacy sense, I guess. So it's that sacred masculine thing, whatever your gender is, of like, I know where I'm at, and I feel like I'm in a very abundant kingdom. I feel like I have a lot of resources at my disposal, and now I can bring them together and use them not just to heal myself away from a state of emergency, but into a relationship with the rest of the world that is beneficial and symbiotic and balanced. So I think that's a good place to end it. I think the zombie is officially taken care of. I wish you all the love in the world if anything I've described has really hit home. I'm sorry if any of it was triggering. If you do want to work with me further on any of this, and I do some readings that are really on piece with this, right? Do check out my shop in the link down below. I've got 20% off throughout August, so now is a good time to book. But if you don't feel like you can do that at the moment, or you're just interested and you enjoyed my content, please like, subscribe, do the darn thank you kindly. But also, you might want to check out the shuffle playlist that I've got linked below of completely free readings. Hit that, hit shuffle, and then the first thing you find, whether it's a pick a pile or what, might be kind of further elaboration if you want something more but you don't want to pay at this time, because I know everybody's coming from different places. That's absolutely cool, right? But if it was beneficial, please do share the channel, stay with us, right? There will be happier readings, I promise. I've had a little bout of a couple that have been like, whoa, but I promise you, we will rebalance, we will get there. And I want you to try and enjoy this process of going from the 9 to the King, because the worst truly is behind you. Take care of yourself.